And there's an interesting indie film called Another Earth, which I recommend, where we discover another Earth exactly opposite our orbit. And everything is identical until the two Earths communicated with each other.
He was hoping to meet his twin. He's kind of disappointed.
No.
Yeah.
Anyways,
It's like that Seinfeld
Neil,
episode.
tell us
Bizarro
about
Jerry.
your new book, new book that came out, Starry Messenger.
Starry Messenger, yeah, just a few months ago. It's my attempt to show everyone what the world looks like when you're scientifically literate and you have a cosmic perspective on it. So it's called Cosmic Perspectives. It's Starry Messenger, Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization. And so there are chapters in there that, yeah, there's one on risk and reward. It reminds us that we are really bad at statistics. And there's an entire industry that exists knowing this fact, and they're called casinos. Okay, you have people trying to roll dice, and they need high numbers, so they roll the dice harder to try to get high numbers, or they roll it softer if they want a low number. They're betting on 7 on the roulette table, and I say, well, why are you betting on it like 6 times in a row? It's due. I say, why do you think it's due? Well, because look at the previous rolls and no, it's not due. This is an inability to understand probability and statistics, and I think it's a failure of the wiring of the human species brain. Do you realize the first time anyone ever took an average of numbers, realizing that would be a good idea? That was not until like the late 1700s. Calculus had already been developed, geometry, algebra, all of that. And it was the late 1800s. When our country was being born, someone said, maybe I'll take an average and see if that's good. That's statistics. Yes, late. Wow. Late. And so that tells me that statistics is not a natural way
to... This is even post-Newton.
Yes, post-Newton.
And he's the guy that started calculus.
Newton
he's the whole calculus.
Correct. Yeah. The man birthed calculus, and taking an average happened later.
That's crazy.
It's completely crazy. So that tells me, it hints to me that statistics is not a native way we ever think about anything. And so it's a struggle to then replace your emotional interpretation of what's going on with a statistical one. Again, that gets back to the early point about advertisers. They will give an emotional case rather than just simply show a bar chart. I want to see a bar chart. Is this the best product?
Yeah.
And then there's the data. Then fine. I don't need someone tearing up in the screen telling me how much they love the product. Just give me the data. But they know that doesn't work. And so here's what's interesting. Do you know where lottery money goes to?
It funds schools.
It's funds schools.
Yeah.
So let's look at the school curriculum. Oh, there's no statistics taught.
Jesus Christ!
It's like maybe it's an elective or something, but it's not part of the reading, writing, arithmetic. So I wonder why there's no statistics. Because if they taught statistics, you would know not to play the lottery.
They would tell you not to play the
lottery. So this is my only conspiracy theory I've ever had, that the states intentionally don't teach you statistics so that you become an adult lottery player so they can still get the money.
There's a lot more conspiracy theories to follow except that one. No. It is what it is.
That one actually has some validity.
That's the only one I'm sticking to. All right, that's my only. You give me one conspiracy theory, that's the one.
Wow.
So there's a whole chapter on that. There's a chapter on color and race. So I go there. There's one on meat eaters and vegetarians. These are warring factions in society where people dig their heels in with strongly held opinions. And I just say, look, here's what that looks like to a scientist. And here's what it would look like coming from above. Yeah. And often the opinions just evaporate. They just, I'll give an example in the vegetarian meat eater chapter. Okay. We all know vegetarians, and one of them, some might be vegetarians because they just don't want to kill animals. Okay? All right. Fine. So they have a humane mouse trap in their basement. You trap the mouse, and then what do you do after you capture it?
Eat it.
No. What do they do after they capture the mouse?
They let it go.
They take it back out to the woods to let it go.
And then it comes back in.
Wait. Out to the woods where it is basically guaranteed to be swallowed whole by an owl or picked apart by a predator bird or eaten by a fox or any manner of woodland predators. And the average life expectancy of a mouse in the wild is about 18 months. So the safest thing for the mouse is to leave it in your basement where it could live up to 6 years, a full natural life, but that's not what happens. So the idea that you want to preserve life and you don't want to kill it, and you take it out and put it in the wild where it's guaranteed to be killed, that person possibly hasn't fully thought that through. Continuing, they're living in a house made of the wood from 50 trees, typically. Trees that would have lived 100 years. Each of those trees was home to birds, to squirrels, to insects, to mushrooms. To all manner of life forms are being sustained on each one of those trees. And each one of those 50 trees that was cut down to build your house, to make the floorboards, the 2x4s, the structural members, the siding, each one of those trees produces 15 times the mass of the mouse in oxygen every day. So what do you think nature cares more about? The tree or the 1 ounce mouse? Think about that. What has greater value to the ecosystem? The mouse you saved or the 50 tree? I would think so.
Of course.
But I don't want to force that opinion on people. But just when you analyze it, that's a cosmic perspective on decisions that you're making. I don't see you not buying a wooden house because you're worried about the trees that were made from it. So what it comes down to at some level, and how about the people who buy line-caught tuna? Do you know why they do that? Because if it's not line-caught, it's probably caught in a net. And net dragging sometimes brings in a dolphin, which are air-breathing, and then they suffocate and die. All right, so they don't want to kill dolphins. So they buy line-caught. So I'm thinking, all right, you saved the dolphin, but what about the tuna? Okay, you're eating the tuna, all right?
Who cares about the tuna? They only care about the dolphin.
They only care about well, why do you only care about the dolphin?
Because they've got a good personality.
Okay, wait, because they're cute and they're
Flipper,
mammals.
hello?
But wait a minute, if you're eating meat, you're probably also eating cow and pig and lamb that are also mammals. Okay, so what I try to do in the book is expose your opinion to other ways of looking at what it is you're doing. When you're done, I don't want to stop you from doing what you're doing, but if you do it, I want it to be fully informed. And it's a whole other chapter on conflict and resolution, where there are these tropes that liberals lob onto right-wingers. They say, everyone on the right is anti-science and they're this, and they cite the denial of climate change, which is an existential threat. That's definitely a denial of some or all mainstream science. Also, occasionally there's denial of evolution. That typically is the extreme religious group. Okay, so the liberals want to feel like they have the high road, but they don't. Because let's look for who is taking homeopathic medicine that is deeply within the liberal community. This is medicine that has no curative molecules in it at all, having been diluted into that state. So there's like feather energy and chakra realignment and all manner of thinking and philosophies that are deeply embedded in the liberal world view, and to embrace them requires you reject some or all mainstream science associated with it. It requires that. And so therefore, the liberal cannot claim the high ground. This includes attitudes towards GMOs, for example. If you look at scientists, the percentage of scientists who are all in for GMOs, it closely matches the percentage of Republicans who are all in for GMOs, and the percentage of liberals who are in for GMOs is way less. So what's happening here, they'll cite, well, because of big pharma and this and that, whatever, but they're not aligned with the science on it. That's my point. If you want to say you're with the scientists, then you be with the scientists on GMOs, and they're not. All right? So it requires rejection of some or all mainstream science. So the trope, they're anti-science and we're not, is false, objectively false, statistically in the communities. How about the one about being family values? That's a common trope lobbed against liberals by conservatives. Well, wait a minute. What would be a measure of family value? How about staying married? How about that? Do you know the state with the lowest divorce rate in the country? It's Massachusetts. By far the lowest divorce rate. Do you know the highest divorce rate? It's in the book. Something like 8 out of the 10 highest divorce rate states voted red in the last elections? How about teenage pregnancies, out of wedlock pregnant and teenage pregnancies? Red states lead the pack in those numbers. The only presidents of the United States to have ever been divorced have been Republican presidents. And that's, of course,
Trump,
Reagan,
and Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So who are you to say and claim the high road of family values here when certain objective measures argue against it? And so what I'm saying is you can cherry pick it and say, oh, the liberals, they're into like loose sex or whatever. You cherry pick that because liberals are staying married longer than you are. Okay? So in there, I'm just approaching all these as a scientist would. Look at the data. Look at the evidence you might have bias against. And now let me show it to you, reveal it to you. So there's a chapter on gender and identity, a chapter on life and death, body and mind, truth and beauty.
Is all this that you're saying?
I'm looking at the website right now, by the way. Divorce rates, it's, who's at the top, who's at the lowest.
Yeah, look at the highest divorce rate state. It's a red state. It's been red for every major election this century.
Arkansas, yeah. Oklahoma, Nevada, New Mexico, and the lowest one is Maine, D.C., Dakota, Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois.
No, Massachusetts should be in there.
No. Massachusetts is on that list as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's contradictions of both sides.
Correct.
To say relax.
Correct. Because they repeat it and want you to then think it's true.
Is it cognitive dissonance or is it hypocrisy?
It's cognitive bias. I don't want to say dissonance. It's just bias. You want something to be true, so you repeat it often enough until people who follow you think it's true. It's like saying we live in a Christian nation. That's actually an objectively false statement. Repeat it enough that you get enough people saying it on political platforms and talk shows and all manner of things.
Well, Reza Aslan, I don't know if you know who Reza Aslan is.
Yes, I do, yes.
Yeah.
He believes U.S. is a Judeo-Christian nation. That's a joke between us.
Oh, okay.
If he's watching this right now, he's losing his mind.
Yeah, if he can say it, he can say it, but there's no mention of Jesus in our Constitution. There's not even mention of God in the document that forms our country. You would think if we knew we were self-aware as a Christian nation, there'd be some references to Jesus, who's the foundation of Christianity, but there isn't. There's one mention of God in the Constitution, but it's a very minor one. It's extremely minor.
What was it?
It's at the very end. Anno Domini 1789. That's the only mention, which is the tradition of, it's AD. That's the year, so you put it in. So, and there's other evidence.